The bright sun shines on the sea, and the layers of waves are shining brightly. A small platoon sailing smoothly, the bow raised like the neck of a swan separates the sea, and the waves jump like musical notes. On both sides of the stern stretched out long poof-shaped oars, which rode neatly in the sound of the boat horn. When the wind was calm, the oars became the main driving force of sailing. According to common sense, you need to do a lot of preparations to sail smoothly. First of all, you must understand this sea area, you must have enough food and water, and at least you must have a compass that is not very smart. But the people on this ship were not prepared at all, and the captain of the turbulent captain didn't even know the name of this sea area. On the deck of the boat, Tang Ke arrogantly put his hands behind his back. He was wearing a black trench coat, and his strong chest was exposed at the front. The sailors gathered and waited quietly for the captain to speak. These sailors have deep-set eyes, bushy beards, and stocky builds. After half a month's voyage, the ship's supplies were all in a hurry, and there was very little food and water left. If the belt was tightened, the 20 or so people could still eat for a week. At this time, the biggest task facing Tank as the captain is to stabilize people's hearts. It is very close to the port now, and it is estimated that we will arrive in 7 days. But we have a small problem. There is not much left of bacon jerky and rice on the ship, so I decided that your daily food intake will be halved. Tank pointed to the 5 big and 3 thick sailors. Those who violate the order will be thrown into the sea to feed the fish. Those who are unconvinced can be singled out with me. If they lose to me, they will also be thrown into the sea. Tank said proudly. He tried to deceive himself into it, but he didn't even know where the port was. The fate of the future can only be left to fate. He couldn't tell the truth or sailors would riot over food shortages. Captain, what about yourself? A scrawny sailor asked. The other sailors also looked at Tank. What about myself? Tank frowned. I mean your appetite, the sailor explained. Tank hesitated for a moment, scolding the talkative sailor in his heart, and replied bitterly, I am the same, my food intake is halved. But the fish I caught belongs to me. The sailors undoubtedly acquiesced to the captain's little favor. Another point to emphasize is that it is strictly forbidden to urinate on the mast. I don't want mushrooms to grow under the mast. Tank said seriously, as the captain, he cherished the ship very much, which was his private property. The sailors agreed one after another, and some couldn't help laughing, apparently fertilizing the masts a lot. There's nothing else to do, let's go. As soon as the captain raised his hand, the sailors dispersed and took their places. Some dexterously climbed up the observation deck along the rope ladder, while others walked down the ladder and entered the cabin. One of the slow sailors was kicked viciously by the captain, and he quickened his movements and ran to fix the ropes. The captain who manages this gang of gangsters must not be a gentle gentleman. The sea breeze kept blowing on Tank's black hair, and there was a sea smell in the wind, which was the breath of life. The wind direction of this sea area changes frequently, and it is not a constant trade wind, which will always make people unable to figure it out. Sailors must adjust the angle of the jib accordingly, so that the wind fills the sails and maintains the fastest speed. Now the north wind is blowing, and the nimbus cloud can be seen slowly approaching in the distance. It seems that it is about to rain. This will alleviate the problem of water shortage. As soon as Tank had this thought, the sky turned cloudy, and the sea was as unpredictable as a woman. A few days ago, Tank was a landlubber, and he didn't know how to recognize the weather, but since he traveled here inexplicably, he has acquired these skills. He was originally a gangster thug who worked in a karaoke hall and was responsible for maintaining order. He is an orphan. He grew up in an orphanage since he was a child. Because he has no elders to control him, he is used to living a life of freedom. He liked to fight with people since he was a child. It can be said that he fought from childhood to adulthood. Later, he made a living by fighting, watching for the boss and cleaning up those troublemakers. He works on a sleepless street. The whole street is an entertainment place. At night, the street is like a car show. People seek all kinds of pleasures in the feast of the lights. If you want to open a store on that street, it is impossible to just have money, you must have some background and power, and each store has to support a few thugs like him. Because of the nature of his work, he has a lot of free time. When he has nothing to do, he will play some computer games, such as the newly released annual masterpiece Pirate King. Pirate King focuses on sailing and outlines a grand maritime world, but unlike other ordinary sailing games, this game incorporates many fantasy elements, which game reviewers call the sailing version of The Lord of the Rings. At the beginning of the game, a powerful sentence will pop up, sailing in the turbulent waves, drinking and laughing in the cannon fire, this is the hymn of pirates. Players in the game take the identity of pirates and carry out various pirate activities, such as looting, naval battles, kidnappings and the like. This ferocious profession is full of fantasy and makes people fascinated by it. Although sea trade can also be carried out in the game, the income is meager, and only looting will get rich rewards. The main line and side tasks of the game are also related to the identity of pirates. The goal is to dominate the entire sea and form an invincible fleet at sea. Strong enough to be able to go to any corner of the sea, only in this way can he be regarded as the king of the sea. There are not a few sailing games, and it can be said that each has its own characteristics, and the focus of this Pirate King is on fantasy. In the game, players can build all kinds of exotic ships, including ghost ships, sea monster ships that can dive, magic ships equipped with magic cannons, and even ships made of dragon bones. In addition, sailors also have a variety of abilities, such as swordsmen with peerless elegance, noble and powerful magicians, and dark and mysterious wizards. It is these fantasy elements that make this game's naval battles unique. In the game's promotional video, there is a magnificent naval battle video, a ship built on the back of a whale and another aircraft carrier full of griffins. Become a powerful airstrike force. The video did not record the entire battle, but only captured a few wonderful pictures, which made people watch with excitement. The way of life of pirates has deeply attracted Tank. He has been paying attention to the release of this game. He got the game at the first time, and can't wait to install it on the computer. He set up an account in the game, gave the characters his name, and got a boat and more than 24 sailors. These sailors have hook-throwing stunts, which can accurately throw the rope hook on the enemy ship when the two ships are approaching, and then climb the enemy ship's deck through the rope. After Tang Ke led a raiding mission, he drove a small boat out to sea. Not long after he went out to sea, he shot 2 sea monsters at sea. He was having a great time playing, when an earthquake suddenly occurred. Under the violent shaking, he slammed his head on the display screen, and immediately saw wounds and blood. This incident caused a strange change. His whole person fell into the whirlpool. Along the way, he was full of brilliance, and countless pictures flew by. He flew to the end of the light, and after falling out of it, he was already standing on the bow, facing the boundless sea. The 20 or so strong men on the boat all called him the captain, as if it was only natural. Tank grew up fighting. He is a courageous man who is not afraid. He remained calm, and after several days of continuous observation www.mtlnovel.com found out the basic situation. The sailors on this ship are familiar, just like the sailors in the Pirate King game. After he arrived here, his physical strength increased, and he learned a language and sailing knowledge. The shape of this ship is also the same as in the game, with a small skull flag hanging on it, indicating that this is a pirate ship. The next day, Tang Ke took off the skull and crossbones flag. The world is alive and should not be taken lightly. The pirate flag is too ostentatious. Pirate ships only raise the pirate flag after finding their prey, and the pirate flag has other deep meanings. For example, the red flag represents slaughter, and it is not hung up casually. And this world, is it in the game, or is it another world? Tonk is still unknown. When things got to this point, Tank accepted the fact of crossing and assumed the identity of the pirate captain, with the thin machete around his waist and the helm in his hand, ordering the sailors to break through the waves. He used to be a thug, but now he is a pirate. Anyway, they are both villains. The nature of the two is not much different. He will not feel stage fright. Go up and loot it. The game system of Pirate King was also accompanied by him, and now this system is rooted in his mind. As long as the mind moves, it can be easily dispatched. However, the system interface is now gray and cannot be clicked in. A row of prompts appears in the lower right corner of the screen. Due to the conversion of the world map and the serious conflict of data, the game system is being integrated. Current progress, 90%. In progress, please wait. Tank glanced at the grey system interface again, and it seemed that it was about to be completed. He was looking forward to the help of this game system. The ship is now short of water and food, and the location of the land is still unknown. This is a big trouble. This progress has risen very slowly. After so many days have passed, it has slowly risen to 90%. He turned off the picture in his mind and looked at the endless sea. The sky was overcast, and the sea was covered with a heavy layer of grey. He sat inside the guardrail, the only fishing rod on the boat in his hand, hoping to catch something to eat. The supplies on the boat are very scarce, there is only this fishing rod. When the boat is running, the chance of catching fish is very small, but it is impossible to stop the boat, and no one will expect to use a fishing rod to supply. If there is a fishing net, it is almost the same. A group of unknown fish flew out from the sea with a pair of transparent wings. They plunged into the sea in an arc, and then flew out quickly, splashing waves. Looking at the scenery in the sea, Tank felt that being a pirate is not bad, and a free life is what he yearns for. Little ones, it's too quiet, sing for me. Tank shouted on a whim. The ferocious sailors quickly responded to the captain's order, howling in rough voices, "We are pirates, fierce pirates. We have wine bottles in our left hand and treasures in our right. We are pirates, skilled pirates. Beautiful. Girls, please come to my arms." What a bunch of outspoken bad guys. The corners of Tank's mouth were full of smiles. He really liked this group of subordinates. During these days, he had talked to every sailor, hoping to find out some clues, but none of these sailors had much memory, except that they were a sailor. Donk infers that these sailors may have been created by the game, and like him, know nothing about the world. There was a sudden tension on the fishing rod in his hand, and he almost couldn't catch the fishing rod, and his body staggered. He was not surprised but delighted. After so many days of fishing, this was the first time that a fish had bitten the hook. He clenched the fishing rod and pulled it back hard, pushing his feet on the guardrail to take advantage of it. Since he came to this world, his strength has increased a lot, but he still can't pull up the fishing rod, which shows the strength of this fish to bite the hook. "Come and help me!" Tank roared with a blushing face. The sailors ran over when they heard the sound, and they all grabbed the fishing rod, which turned the situation around. Pulled by the two forces, the fishing line was taut, and the fishing rod hung its head, as if it were broken. "The fishing line is about to break, hurry up and let it go," Tank said anxiously. He let go of his hand and let the other sailors continue to pull. He ran off and grabbed a rope and tied it to the harpoon. When he ran back, he nearly fell on the slippery deck. After the fishing line was extended, the tension was relieved. There was a faint shadow swimming in the sea water, constantly turning his head to fight for the fishing line. Tank threw the harpoon at the shadow with a ruthless attack. He missed a hit. He used a rope to pull the harpoon out of the sea and threw it again. This time, after the harpoon went down, there was a burst of red blood in the sea. The sailors shouted, staring at the dark shadows in the sea. Without Tank's order, a sailor had already pulled the rope back, and the shadow gradually emerged from the sea. Judging from the pulling just now, this fish should not be too small, and it would be no problem to boil a pot of fish soup. Tank and the sailors looked at the sea with anticipation, but after the thing was caught, they looked at each other in dismay. What I caught was not a fish, but a little water monster. This guy is very deformed, 30 inches long, silver white all over, with a head that looks like a hideous grimace, and webbed calves at the tail. It bit the fish hook tightly, and it started to vomit blood out of its mouth, and its body was still trembling slightly. Tank scratched his chin, looked at the dead water monster, and said, "Do you think this is edible?" Sailors, look at me, I look at you, and answered in unison, "Yes. You guys are really not picky eaters." Tank looked at the little water monster with disgust, and was still a little bit conflicted in his heart. The sailors didn't care about that. They quickly cleaned up the water monster, scraped off the scales, took out the internal organs, washed them, went to the kitchen to set up a fire, and simmered them in an iron pot. Surprisingly, after the water monster was put into the pot, it didn't take long for the aroma to float, and it smelled quite delicious. Although it was said earlier that the fish caught would belong to the captain, Tank had no intention of occupying the pot of stewed water monsters. After a brave man tasted the non-toxic water monster meat, the sailors gathered around to eat the water monster soup, cut the fresh water monster meat with knives and forks, and scooped the steaming soup with spoons. Destroying this pot of water monster soup is a matter of 3 or 2 minutes. A sailor who was more able to slap his horse brought a bowl to the captain. There was also a plump sea monster leg in the bowl, which was obviously the most meaty part. Tank took it hesitantly, looking at the part that looked like a baby's calf. He really couldn't get his appetite up. There are many strange creatures in this sea, whether they are seabirds or fish, they are very different from those on Earth. This is also one of the reasons why Tank feels that this is a different world. Compared with those huge sea beasts that are hundreds of yards long, this little sea monster is not worth a beat. Seeing the sailors eating so well, Tank was a little tempted, and the aroma that penetrated into the tip of his nose was also seducing him. He took a sip of the soup, which contained only salt as a seasoning, but it tasted as delicious as the chef made it. "Forget it, just eat it like a frog." Tank's heart sank, and he made a move to nibble on the water monster's legs. "Report to the captain. I found an island." The lookout at a high place suddenly shouted excitedly. Tank's mouth stopped in midair, and his neck stretched. He shoved the soup bowl to the sailor beside him, and then hurriedly climbed up to the lookout. The slippery mast couldn't stop him. The lookout excitedly showed the captain the direction. About 1,000 yards to the southeast, there was a undulating bulge on the sea, which really looked like a small island. They don't have a high-end product like a telescope, and can only look out by visual observation. Tank rubbed his eyes vigorously and repeatedly identified, for fear that what he saw was a mirage. Fortunately, it does look like an island. It's an island, haha, we're saved. Tank laughed loudly, grabbed the rope and slid down from it. The sailors also cheered enthusiastically when they heard the news. "Let the rowers speed up, and you can adjust the sail for me." Tank ordered quickly, and he personally controlled the rudder, so that it would be faster. The distance that seemed to be 1,000 yards was actually very far. After their boats docked, they jumped off the boat and pulled the boat up to the beach with manpower. The ship had dropped its anchor and was deeply rooted in the mud by the sea. "You guys stay to guard the boat, and then fix the boat, and the rest come with me." Tank was about to leave, suddenly remembered something, turned around and said, "Almost forgot, you all brought your weapons, to prevent accidents." As a captain, Tank wears a slender machete all day long, but the sailors do not wear weapons because they have to do a lot of hard work, and they keep the weapons in boxes. In order to maintain the weapon, someone has to wipe it twice a day. Tank's slender machete was decorated, and the metal for the sword was relatively strong. As soon as the sword was pulled out, it was bright and dazzling. In contrast, the weapons of sailors are very crude. In fact, Tang Ke was not very satisfied with this slender machete. After all, it was a European thing, and it felt that it was not as powerful as a machete. Going ashore, Tank looked around for a few times, surrounded by sandy beaches and reefs, and only dense vegetation in the distance. This island is too small, it is estimated that he can run around it in 3 hours. When you shout, the other side of the island can hear it clearly. Tunk led the sailors forward, and their main purpose was to obtain food and water. Each of these sailors looked very bold. Tang Ke felt that it was too solid to bring them. Even if they encountered some monsters or something, it was estimated that these people would be able to slash to death if they rushed up. The plants of the pirates have a Caribbean style. Among them, the coconut tree is the most towering, with needle-like leaves spreading out in the canopy, under which are hidden ripe fruits, and the sturdy trunk is curved. No one cares about other plants, but this coconut tree is a rare good thing. Tang Ke and the sailors climbed up the tree one after another and cut down all the coconuts. Looking at the growing number of coconuts under the tree, he breathed a sigh of relief. In this way, the water source problem was temporarily alleviated. Tank and the others left the coconuts where they were, and they were ready to fetch them when they left. They went deep into the oasis of the island. There were no animals inside, but there were some mosquitoes and ants. Tang Ke was bitten twice, and it was painful. He moved a fire and set his mind on the woods. www.mtlnovel.com searched around in the woods, except for the coconut trees, he never found any edible plants. No one knew those colorful wild fruits, and Tank ordered that no one could eat them, because there was no need to take this risk. Looking at the green vegetation under his feet, he suddenly remembered the sweet potatoes in his hometown, which reminded him that the rhizomes of some plants are also edible. He immediately ordered the sailors to dig. They used their scabbards as shovels, so the soil was moist and easy to dig. "Thank you for the blessing of Poseidon, the of the sea," a sailor shouted excitedly, holding a newly dug plant in his hand, with a bunch of round rhizomes hanging on it, which turned out to be potatoes. "Haha, I didn't find a sweet potato, but I found a potato. Not bad, not bad." For the first time in his life, Tank saw potatoes so pleasing to the eye, as if they were a gold ingot. After that, the digging is simple, because there are the leaves and stems on the ground of the potatoes as a reference, so everyone can dig purposefully without digging everywhere. The sailors were all strong and mobile, and it didn't take long for the potatoes to pile up into hills. In the middle of the excavation, the rain that had been brewing for a while finally fell. The rain was not small, and everyone's clothes were soaked. Fortunately, these people are all full of firepower, and they don't care about the light rain at all. Tank treated the rain as a shower and was very comfortable. They also collect some rainwater, which is also drinkable, so that water and food are replenished. After the rain passed, Tank wanted to leave with the sailors just like that, but the sailors in the distance suddenly shouted, "Come here, there is a sunken ship." Tank raised his eyebrows. This was an unexpected gain. He didn't think much about it, and rushed to the sinking site with the sailors. But when he got to the place, he was discouraged. It turned out to be a small boat, so small that it could only take a few people. There was a skeleton lying in the boat. It seemed to have been dead for a long time. The twisted skeleton looked at Tank and the others with dark eyes. If it was a corpse, Tank would be afraid of corpse poison or something, but he was not afraid of skeletons at all, probably because he killed too many skeletons in the past when he was cutting legends. The rain was pouring down, making the boat wet. Some rainwater accumulated on the bottom of the boat, and the bones were soaked in the water. Tang Ke took the lead and jumped into the boat, rummaging through the clothes of the skeleton. After searching for a while, I found a rusted compass and then a rotten sailing diary. The compass was crushed by Tank, stained with rust on his hand, and the voyage diary could no longer be opened, and the pages were glued together. He set the target on the skeleton again, and when he encountered something in the skeleton's close-fitting pocket, he pulled it out and took a closer look in front of him. It turned out to be half a sheepskin map, which gave people a special sense of history, but unfortunately it was a residual map. The picture above is a sea area, and the delicate black lines are still very clear. But if it's a map, it's still a bit weird. There are several rows of written records on it, but Tank couldn't understand it. After he traveled here, he learned a language out of thin air, and he could also write words, but it was different from the one on this picture. Below the text is the pattern, with a lot of oblique lines surrounding a place, obviously pointing. There is a snake-shaped pattern in the middle, which is a cobra, but the body of the snake is partially mutilated. There is also a boat drawn in the lower left corner, which is a medium-sized sailboat, which is much more stylish than Donk's boat. Is it a treasure map? As soon as Tank was tempted, he saw that the sailors were all around, so he put away the treasure map as if nothing had happened, and prepared to study it later when he had time. This skeleton has already been scavenged by Tank, and it was about to be stewed into pork rib soup. There are still water jugs on the boat, but they have been broken. It seems that the deceased died at sea. Since the boat was still in good condition, Tang asked the sailors to carry the boat away and put it on the big boat as a lifeboat. Before leaving, a sailor said in frustration, "If we leave him alone like this, we will be cursed. This is a blasphemy to the dead." Tank glanced at the sailor and said, "Then you can stay with him. You can listen to him tell you the story of the little duck at night." The sailor was stunned for a while, looked back at the skeleton lying on the beach, read Poseidon's blessing in his mouth, and hurried up to follow the crowd. Tank and the others put the harvest on the boat in the rain. These coconuts and potatoes are enough for them to eat for more than half a month, which is quite inspiring. It was a pity that Tank couldn't find the chart on the skeleton, and the treasure map was incomplete. Many roots were broken in the middle. If the other half was not found, it would be basically scrapped. They left the island the next day, and the small sailboat swayed back to the embrace of the sea, riding the waves under the dual action of wind and manpower. After a night of sleep, Tank also became refreshed. He walked out of the captain's room with a shaggy beard. The sky was clear. Looking around, the sea and the sky were the same color, and his mind became wider. After a rain yesterday, they collected a large bucket of rainwater. Although they have a bunch of coconuts, the fresh water can last longer, and it is still a lot of stockpiles when they don't know when they will be able to land. Rainwater and running water are both drinkable directly, and it's even better if they are boiled. Because he was lucky enough to come across that small island, Tang Ke did not live on a hungry stomach. He could eat 70% every day, and the baked potatoes were still very good. In a flash, many days have passed. "The deck is too wet, come and wipe it." "Are you all blind? I have to remind me of this." Tang Ke patrolled boredly, and when he saw the lazy sailor, he stepped up and kicked. The sailors didn't have any resistance, and some sailors really liked to be lazy. If they were kicked out of a deep sleep, they would sneer at the sullen Tank a few times before getting up and running to work. Ding! The data integration is complete, and the basic functions are available. Please check it out. Suddenly, a system sound came from Tank's mind, and it was a female voice. He was shocked. This was what he had been looking forward to for many days. He did not hesitate to call up the interface in his mind and found that it was no longer gray. Main interface, player Tank Fleet Crew Quest Props C Chart Recruit Exchange. Tang Ke first clicked on his name, and his attributes immediately popped up. Name, Tank. Occupation, Captain, Tier 1. Swordsman, Tier 1. Race, Human. Title, None. A well-known title will bring unexpected effects. Traits, Rogue Temperament, you will give people an evil feeling. Favorability 1, but can make people feel stressed and will attract other rogues to join your fleet. Adventurous Spirit, you are a brave and fearless person, which will allows you to perform at a super level in battle. Combat Power +1, Physical Attack, this determines your strength in a duel. Please fight to your heart's content when you engage in a battle with an enemy ship. Equipment, ordinary scimitar skills, basic swordsmanship. You can defeat most ordinary people with sword skills, but only ordinary people. Rush boat, you can use command and operation to make the boat travel fast for a short period of time. Please use this skill in rating above. Physical strength, pirates need a strong physique. Many skills will consume physical strength when using them, such as using sword skills. Commanding power. Superior commanding power can make the crew and sailors submit to you and obey your command. If it is too low, it is more likely to cause riots. Charisma, charm means attraction. A charismatic captain can attract more crew members to join the fleet, and also play an important role in buying and selling goods. Prestige, 0. Your reputation can have far-reaching effects. A bad reputation can make your enemies terrified and even surrender without a fight. A good reputation will make dealing with the Empire easier, and some sailors will also be attracted to it come to you. Navigation ability, you are a qualified small boat helmsman. Language, common language of the Light Alliance, a broad language used by humans, dwarves, elves, and other races. Physical condition, healthy. Title, none at the moment. Affiliation, none at the moment. Funding, 15 gold coins, 65 silver coins, 88 copper coins. Pirates, none at the moment. Owned vessel, small boat, quantity 1, comprehensive strength, you are still a little shrimp in the sea, please work hard. Bounty amount, 0, you haven't done any earth-shattering big cases. When you give the Empire a headache, you will be wanted and rewarded, attracting bounty hunters and the Navy to hunt you down. Reward points, 0, reward points can be used for various purposes, please take missions to earn them, and piracy can also increase reward points. Don't forget that this is a pirate game. After carefully looking at his attributes, Tank couldn't help laughing dumbly. He didn't expect that he could still have the characteristic of rogue temperament. Although it would reduce his favorability, he could attract people who liked his odor to join his fleet. He looked at himself up and down. He really didn't look like a good person. He exuded the aura of slapping people with bricks, and when he stood in the crowd, passers-by would definitely walk around him. Although there is no exact value for each item, it is more intuitive to use the star icon to represent it. The value represented by should be very large, and the meaning of should be half a star. At present, the world may have multiple races and occupations. He clicked on the fleet column again, and the poor ship information was clearly displayed. Fleet list, Whirlwind, small rowing sailboat, a small boat mainly paddling, suitable for many waters, and can also be driven in headwinds. Durability, 10. Displacement, 30 tons, this is a small combat boat, not suitable for transporting goods. The displacement is very low. Maximum number of people, 40 people, including captain. Current number, 1 captain and 23 sailors. Weapon, pedestal crossbow, quantity 3, comprehensive combat power. Functional buildings, captain's room, kitchen, observation deck, bridge, sailor cabin. Quantity 1, material cabin. Quantity 2, accessories, jib. The jib can maintain a stable speed in the headwind. Quantity 1, lifeboat. Quantity 1, average speed, 4 knots, 1 knot equals 1 knot per hour. Stability, the smaller the boat, the worse the stability. Under the impact of the big waves, the boat is more likely to tilt or capsize. Flexibility, boats powered by paddles will face difficulty in turning. After a rough browse, Tank understood that all his current values, regardless of personal data or ship data, were basically 1 star. Only his combat power reached 2.5 stars. This made him feel that he used bricks before. The days of filming people have contributed greatly, honing his powerful attacking power. After he closed the fleet information, he clicked on the crew information and found that it was empty. He didn't have a single capable crew member. www.mtlnovel.com, but there was a sailor introduction. Grappling hook sailors. They are able to board enemy ships by throwing grappling hooks. They are good at deck fighting. They are a bunch of sea thugs. Combat strength, skill, throwing grappling hook. Number of people, 23. Loyalty, 90. Your sailors are loyal to you, they have absolute loyalty and will never betray you for profit. Fatigue, 83. Your sailors still maintain good stamina, dropping below 15 will cause them to strike. Take note, maintenance fee, 10 silver coins /person/month. These grappling sailors are Tank's current highest combat capability. His ship doesn't even have a cannon, and can only rely on pickup battles to fight. This gang of ferocious sailors has only half a star in combat strength, which proves that the difference in the increase of half a star is quite large. Tank clicked on the task column and found that it was empty, then clicked on the props. Prop, mysterious residual picture, it has a mysterious color and a heavy sense of history. If it is collected neatly, it will trigger a treasure hunt. On one side, you can also click on the picture of the remnant of the mystery, which is exactly the same as the one in Tank's pocket. Only important props will be displayed in the props column, ordinary items will not appear in it. Tank wanted to read the system interface in one breath, and put his mind and body in his mind, but the lookout's shout interrupted him. Report to the captain, a ship was found at 30 degrees to starboard. Tank hurriedly turned off the system interface, opened his eyes, and looked at the left side of the hull. There was nothing on the sea. The watchman was still shouting and shouting, so Tank had to climb up the watchtower with his hands and feet, and looked at it from a height. Only then did he see the shadow of a boat on the sea. The ship came by the wind, and the shadow gradually grew larger. It was a medium-sized brig with grey sails blown by the wind and a sharp ramming angle on the bow, like a lone rushing at sea. Horned beast! Tank's heart was agitated. He needed to get in touch with people in this world in order to understand the location at sea and find supplies in the port. He was thinking about how to treat the incoming ship. Should he ask politely, or would he forcefully hijack the ship in the past? The medium-sized brig did not come directly, but made a detour, and after finding a downwind direction, it galloped with the strongest wind, and the splashing waves were enough to overturn Donk's whirlwind. Seeing the menacing posture of the medium-sized ship, Tang Ke frowned and showed a solemn expression. The other party deliberately looked for the direction downwind before approaching. It was obviously because the visitor was not good. Coupled with the ramming angle that was obviously used for attack, it seemed that this medium-sized ship is an armed ship. As soon as he had this thought, the ship immediately raised a flag with a large black toad painted on the flag, fluttering in the wind with a strange and inexplicable meaning. Pirate flag? It looks like a thief has met a thief. Tank smiled wryly, then cheered up, drew his sword to the sky, and shouted. Everyone picked up their weapons and went to the deck to stand by. We met our peers. Everyone come out and say hello. The speed of the whirlwind is obviously inferior to that of the other party. If it escapes, it will only become a target. It is better to wait for it. Tank let the watchman beside him go down and left alone on the circular observation deck, where the two of them were a little crowded. There were more than a dozen sailors gathered on the deck of the Whirlwind, and the rest were still rowing. They watched the behemoth come through the waves without fear, with swords in their hands and grappling hooks hanging from their waists, ready to fight at any time. That boat is of the speed type, with a square sail and a triangular sail fully open. It's like a wild horse. Tank knew that the strength of the enemy and ours was very different, so he clenched his slender machete a little bit. The strong wind from the sea and the momentum of the enemy ship blew his face and ruffled his hair. See the opportunity to avoid their collision. Tank shouted, and the sailors immediately took action, constantly adjusting the direction of the boat. The big boat rushed over, the small boat narrowly escaped. The splashing waves covered their faces, the sailors took a sea bath, and the hull swayed constantly. Even sailors who were familiar with sea life fell down several times, which caused them a while scolding. Tank clenched the guardrail of the observation deck, barely stabilized his body, and looked at the big ship opposite. Even if he stood on the observation deck, he could only be parallel to the opponent's deck. There are gun doors on the opposite ship, and the deck is full of fierce pirates. There are about 70 people. Among them, there is a Onir Med man who has the aura of a high-ranking man and wears a triangular cuffed hat. The Onir Med man has a sturdy stature, and there are many scars on his weathered body. A small gun barrel is installed on his stump, which shines with a bright metallic luster. Usually pirates are used to attaching hooks to stumps, and he is obviously more avant-garde. I'm Baron Keter, the third captain of the Black Toad Pirates. Where did you little thieves come from? The Onir Med male gangster asked shyly. I am the captain of the Whirlwind, not a thief, but also a pirate. I come from the Far East. Tank replied without showing weakness. He did not intend to hide anything, and the conflict of interest between each other would not be based on identity and resolve. In fact, even if Tank didn't admit it, the other party could see their identities. The crew of the Whirlwind looked too much like pirates. This route leading to Port Carlin is the hunting ground of our Black Toad Pirates. Don't you outsiders go to the tavern to inquire about the situation? Haven't you heard of the reputation of our pirates? The pirates on the Black Toad ship were all staring at this side, as if they would jump off at any time. I don't care who you are, don't beat around the bush. If you want to fight, our Cyclone people will accompany you to the end. Tank's pirate group has not been named yet, so it can only call itself the Cyclone for the time being. The Black Toad pirate ship reacted violently. Some pirates were eager to attack, while others were laughing at Tank and the others. In their eyes, the little Whirlwind was vulnerable. Keter drank a few times before the pirates quieted down. Boy, I admire your courage to hit a stone with a pebble. Only people like you can stand in this sea, and you are very skilled in sailing when you avoided the collision just now. Ketel extended an olive branch and said, I am willing to put you after receiving your subordinates. You will be members of the Black Toad Pirates from now on. Tank's eyes changed slightly, his mind turned, and he decided to go with the flow. He said, I am willing to lead the sailors to join your Black Toad Pirates. You put the ladder down, and I will bring someone up to talk to you in detail. He has already inserted the slender machete back into the scabbard. No. We are willing to follow you to the death in the sea, and we will never yield to anyone. A sailor from the Whirlwind shouted excitedly, and other sailors also agreed, expressing their willingness to fight to the end, showing absolute loyalty. Tank was touched by it. He really did not expect that these sailors would be so loyal. And no matter whether the sailors are alive or created by the game, he is willing to take up the identity of the captain and share life and death with the sailors. Shut thee up, I have my own measure. Tank said solemnly. The sailors thought he was going to take the boat to surrender, but they kept trying to dissuade him. Seeing this scene, Keter on the enemy ship was slightly moved. Such a loyal sailor is really rare. The captain who can make so many people loyal to himself must also be a person. He became more interested in Donk, but also more wary. Boy, what's your name? Tank. After he finished speaking, he had already jumped onto the rope ladder extended by the enemy ship, ready to climb up, followed by his sailors, who were willing to follow Tank to any part of the world, even the end of the world. His heart was pounding, and he tried his best to hide that murderous intention. He planned to get on the ship and kidnap Keter, then solve the crisis, and even occupy this medium-sized ship. He is not afraid to fight recklessly, but he prefers to take this risk-taking approach. As for surrendering to the Black Toad Pirates, he didn't think about it at all. Ketel looked at Tank who was climbing up step by step, and for some reason there was a sense of crisis in his heart, as if it was a devil who was climbing up. Their Black Toad Pirates had just experienced a big battle and were eager to absorb fresh blood, otherwise, he would have ordered the Cyclone to sink. Come up yourself first, and let your sailors stay where they are. Ketel subconsciously avoided the risk and shouted at the bottom. Tank's expression remained unchanged, and he said to his sailors, You guys go down and stand by, and I'll go up to solve the problem by myself. The sailors looked at the captain worriedly, and after being scolded for a few words, they reluctantly went down www.mtlnovel.com, but everyone did not put down their weapons and remained on guard. Tank climbed to the edge of the boat, and he was about to get on the boat. He was highly concentrated, and was ready to draw his sword at any time. The pirates on the Black Toad were not idle people, they stared at Tank with malicious intent, making way for him to retreat. Tank stood on the deck calmly and looked at Keter. Tank, which country do you belong to? Judging from your appearance, is it a person from the kingdom of heaven? Or a person from the Wazoo kingdom further away? Ketel looked up and down the black-haired and yellow-skinned Oriental. I don't want to accept a subordinate with a force behind it, even if it is a very distant force. As you guessed, I drifted from the Far East. Tank Gubu said in confusion. Are you a nobleman? Ketel himself is a noble baron. He is a pirate officially authorized by the Dragon Tooth Empire and has a privateer's license. As long as he does not touch the ships of the friendly countries of the Dragon Tooth Kingdom, he can be here. Domineering on the waterway. Tank seemed to be walking forward normally, but he was actually closing the distance with Keter. He smiled wryly. Have you ever seen a noble drive this kind of boat? The East is a land of abundance, and your nobles are even richer. It is not bad that our low-level nobles have such boats. Barons generally only own some baron fiefs. Ketel said as if chatting. It's close enough, it's now. Tank's eyes narrowed, and he was about to reach out and draw a knife. Before Tank could make a move, the pirates on this ship became restless again and shouted, a ship was found at 11 degrees on the port side. It's a medium-sized merchant ship, and it may be full of cargo. The pirates ran to the northwest side of the hull one after another and looked in the direction of the merchant ship, but the merchant ship also saw the pirate ship and turned around like a plague god. Tank's heart was beating wildly, and this change interrupted his chance to strike. He found that Keter was watching him, so he had to return a dry smile and decided to wait and see. Let me all take their places, adjust the sails, change the course, and let's catch up. Keter gave an order, and the pirates moved, forming their own formations and restarting the moored ship. Tank felt that the appearance of the merchant ship was a good opportunity. He didn't act rashly. He stood there with his arms crossed and watched the pirates busy. Ketel turned his head, grabbed Tank's collar, and pulled it closer to his fierce face. He said in a low voice, I'm going to rob the ship. If you want to join us, you can do it now. Go and bring your little wreck to follow, and we'll flank the merchant ship. If you dare to escape, I promise you will die the next time you see the Black Toad pirates. But if you behave well, I'll give you a little bit of this time. Okay, I understand. Tang Kapi said with a smile, and pushed away the black-haired hand on the back of the other party. Keter snorted, strode to the bow, and pointed halfway, warning those pirates who dissatisfied him. Tank turned around immediately, and after starting for a while, holding the guardrail with his left hand, he rolled over and jumped down, landing on the deck of the Whirlwind. Sailors anxiously inquired about the outcome of the negotiations, but no one was willing to surrender. Tank pointed to the distance and said, there is a merchant ship over there, and the people from Black Toad will go and rob them. The people of Black Toad don't take us seriously at all, but it doesn't matter, we will make them regret it. There are only more than 70 of them, so it's not that they have no chance of winning. We can go up and take advantage of the fishermen while they fight with the merchant ships. Do you have the guts to go and grab that big ship with me, rookie pirates? He looked at the sailors with burning eyes. The sailors were silent for a while, and then shouted together, yes. Let's go and show them some color and let them know how powerful we are. Kill. SHH. Be quiet. Tank made a gesture of silence, turned to look at the pirate ship, and found that the man from Black Toad had gone far away, so he was relieved. He turned back and continued, let's catch up, but don't follow too closely and act accordingly. In this way, the small ship Whirlwind sneaked behind the Black Toad pirates, chasing the merchant ship together. Keetle operates the rudder on the bridge of the THRESAL medium-sized ship. His left hand is a gun barrel, so he can only hold the rudder with one hand. After listening to his subordinate's report on the whirlwind, he smiled contemptuously. He thought that the whirlwind just wanted to be a follower, and he never thought that the people of the whirlwind would dare to attack them. Black Toad's boat is like a shark, chasing his prey. The merchant ship tried its best to escape, but it couldn't get rid of the Black Toad pirate ship that was approaching menacingly at the stern. The top of the mast on the merchant ship has a small flag with a mandrake drawn on it, and the ship is called the Mandela. The female captain, Elizabeth, stood at the stern, holding the monocular in her white hands, watching every move of the pirate ship. She frowned, her slender eyebrows were slightly raised, and there was anxiety and worry in her beautiful eyes. "Hurry up and drop all the heavy things on the boat. This will make the boat lighter. Whether it's cargo or buckets, drop them down for me." Elizabeth put down the telescope and ordered decisively. She walked up and down the deck, still graceful at this critical moment. She wears white skinny trousers, which outline a woman's graceful curves in the tightness, and when she steps, the dovetail of the dress will be swayed, and her round buttocks can be seen at that time. The sailors hurriedly threw buckets of seasonings into the sea. These seasonings are luxury items that can only be enjoyed by nobles, and each bucket is very valuable. The maritime trade in the era of great voyages has attractive profits, but such huge profits are accompanied by corresponding risks. "Captain, the shells are very heavy, do you want to throw them too?" asked the very old sailor. Elizabeth hesitated for a moment and said, "Don't throw away the gunpowder and shells, they may be used later." She turned her head to look at the approaching pirate ship, revealing her delicate neck. After a while, an inevitable naval battle is likely to break out. Her hand held the hilt of the sword at her waist, and there was a flintlock bolt pistol pinned to her waist. Although she was a woman, she had a heroic demeanor. A reef appeared in front of the Mandela, and the ship had to turn to avoid it, which made the distance with the Black Toad pirate ship even closer. There was a haze in the hearts of the sailors on the merchant ship. The Black Toad pirates are the most vicious pirates on this route. They are extremely aggressive and often brutally slaughter the resisting ships. After the ship that does not leave a living hole is scuttled, it will sink into the sea little by little. At that time, the sea surface will be dyed red, and sharks from a dozen miles away will be attracted by the smell of blood. Before it was fully approached, the Black Toad pirate ship had issued an attack password. The pirates turned their attention to the door panel of the deck, and there were clanging footsteps below. The door panel was opened, and a giant black toad climbed out. It is the size of a grinding disc, and her slippery body is full of pimples, which makes people frown. The black toad opened his mouth to speak, and said with a long tongue, "Keetle, what's the matter with calling me out? Of course it's a battle, my little pet, I want you to take the toads and smash the merchant ship in front." Keetle said arrogantly. Black Toad made a dissatisfied voice and said angrily, "We are not your pets, remember, we are in a contractual relationship. Be content, it's good that I didn't call you a slave." Although the Black Toad was dissatisfied, it obediently walked up to the bow of the boat. It stretched out its sticky flesh-colored tongue, and the tip of the tongue curled flexibly, holding a cannonball in the iron basket in its mouth. It spit out, its cheeks bulged high, and the cannonball was spit out by it, flying parabolically, and landed on the sea at the stern of the Mandela, causing a splash of water. This kind of toad is the capital of the Black Toad pirate group running rampant in the sea. Their scientific name is called bomb-spitting frogs. They have a range that exceeds that of ordinary artillery. And they don't require manual operation, can aim themselves, and are more accurate than artillery. This is where the name of the Black Toad pirates came from. This ship has a full 15 bomb-spitting frogs. When fighting against a ship of the same size, if the opponent is equipped with ordinary artillery, this ship can completely suppress them. It's not enough, add more strength. Keetle kicked the big toad violently, turned around and shouted, Come on, call a few more toads out. 3 more bomb-spitting frogs crawled out from below the deck and dragged their fat bodies to the bow, leaving sticky marks along the way. They took on the responsibility of the gunners, venting the shells one by one towards the Mandela. This is another advantage of spit frogs, they are more flexible than gun carts and can be placed anywhere on the ship. While firing, the black toad pirates chased the Mandela. After the Mandela slipped into the attack range, the first solid shell shattered its hull, and sawdust splashed, revealing a large hole. A frantic battle cry erupted from the pirate ship. Have you seen the flag? This is the Mandela, and their captain is a woman. It is said that she is very beautiful. A bald pirate with few hairs left laughed. Remember to catch the live one later, and keep it for me. Keetle shouted with lust, he didn't mind catching a temporary boat press lady. The Black Toad pirate ship launched a frantic attack on the Mandela, shell after shell, including chain bullets that hit the mast, and solid iron bullets that shattered the hull. The Mandela is also an armed ship, but it is obviously inferior in firepower, with only 5 small cannons on the deck and 8 large cannons protruding from the hull. Elizabeth looked at the damaged hull, her face paled a bit, bit her tender lips lightly, not knowing what she was thinking. The sailors on the ship were all timid. The shot just now injured 2 people, one was unconscious, and the other was screaming. Captain, why don't we surrender to the pirates? A panicked little sailor raised his head and said. Elizabeth drew out her sword with a clatter, put it on the neck of the little sailor, and said helplessly, it's useless, they are flying the pirate flag of the Black Toad, these people are desperados, even if we surrender, it will not change the fate of being killed. If you want to live, you have to fight them to the death. Be brave, boy, like me, take up your sword. The little sailor was foolishly there. It was the first time he went out to sea and the first time he faced the cruelty of this sea. All preparations, fire the cannon. The female captain drew her sword and shouted www.mtlnovel.com. The crisp voice overwhelmed the roar of the artillery fire and went straight through the sky. The pirate ship and the merchant ship kicked off the battle. They attacked each other at sea. The sound of the cannons was deafening. The sea was blasted with huge waves. The 2 ships stopped at sea to fight as if they were dueling. In order to prevent the hull from being overturned by the recoil of the artillery on the Mandela can only fire in sequence, and it takes many steps to reload the shells, and the interval between firings takes 3 minutes. But the Spit Frog did not have these concerns and problems, and was able to launch continuously and dealt a tragic blow to the Mandela. After the 2 rounds of shelling by the Spit Frog, the Mandela had been hit with a lot of holes. This is the gap between the Spit Frog and the artillery. Tank and the others have been following closely behind, waiting for both sides to make a move when both sides are injured. After watching the battle for a while, Tank changed his mind. If he rashly went to attack the pirate ship, he might attract the firepower of the pirate ship to his side, and the merchant ship would choose to take the opportunity to escape. The only way to do it is to communicate with the merchant ships and make a joint attack agreement. Little ones, hang up our pirate flag. Turn the sails to find the direction of the wind, rush past at maximum speed, and approach the merchant ship from behind. Tank used the ability of a fast-moving ship to increase the speed of the ship through the command. A whole section. The pirate flag of the Cyclone was also hoisted. The square flag of 1 yard square was painted with a skull and crossbones below. This is the classic pattern of the pirate flag. Tank will use actions to tell others that they are also a group of pirates. Because the 2 ships were shelling on the sea, this gave Tang and the others a chance to approach. He chose to approach from the rear is very wise, because the artillery is arranged on both sides of the hull. The front and rear of the ship are the weakest firepower, especially the rear, which is simply a dead end. On the way of the whirlwind approaching the battlefield, Black Toad's pirate ship has completed a long-range strike. The rudder of the Mandela's stern was damaged, and the steering ability was lost. The casualties on board were as high as 40 people, Only half of them were left. Can still move. The pirates didn't want to sink the Mandela, it didn't do them any good, what they wanted was this endangered level of destruction. This would paralyze the Mandela, turning it into a lamb to be slaughtered. The two ships are approaching, which heralds the start of the battle. The pirates laughed horribly, hooked the Mandela with hook rods, and completely locked it on the sea. They have a unique fighting art. First of all, they shouted to create momentum, which attracted people on the merchant ship to shoot with flintlock guns. The sailors on the merchant ship hurriedly refilled their ammunition, and the pirates took advantage of this gap to carry out a real raid, jumping over the distance of a few meters and reaching the merchant ship. "Get off my ship!" Elizabeth pierced a pirate's heart with a thin sword, and then blocked the attack of the two pirates with one enemy and two, dancing the sword in her hand. She used her slender sword in a moderate manner, without showing any panic. She sold a flaw, which attracted the opponent to hit her gauntlet with the sword, and then quickly counterattacked, severing a pirate with a horizontal slash. Throat. Only then did the pirates realize the strength of this beautiful woman, and swallowed the provocative words that came to their mouths. The cheered pirates formed a battle group of 3 or 5, and moved closer to Elizabeth. The pirates fought hard but lacked dueling skills, while Elizabeth was the opposite. She had skills but was afraid in her heart. So in the face of many enemies, she chose to pull out the flintlock pistol and killed the pirate who bore the brunt with one shot, leaving a lead bullet in her forehead forever. The lead bullet is a good thing. Because the lead bullet is soft, it will rapidly deform and spread after being penetrated into the wound, causing the wound surface to be hundreds of times the section of the projectile. Even if a shot does not kill, the residue in the body can lead to lead poisoning. Sailors have no shortage of people who have a crush on the female captain. They know that when it comes time to show manliness, they draw their swords to help the trapped Elizabeth. "Captain, in fact, I have always liked you," the male sailor shouted while covering the wound on his shoulder. Elizabeth showed a helpless expression and replied, "Then help me fight. If I get through this difficulty, I will consider having dinner with you." She stabbed the pirate with another sword, dancing like a blue swallow. Flying away, the blonde hair on the forehead fluttered. The deck of the Mandela became a battlefield. The pirates jumped up one after another. The scene was very chaotic. The sailors and the pirates fought each other, and soon corpses lay on the ground. For fear of destroying the cargo, the pirates did not resort to fire attacks, but the merchant ships had already thrown Molotov cocktails on the approaching pirate ships, causing fire attacks on them. Merchant ships are not vegetarians either. After changing to melee combat, the Spit Frog also changed its combat policy, and instead swallowed a large number of small lead bullets, and then spit them out to create the destructive effect of shotguns. But it's easy to accidentally hurt your comrades. Taking advantage of the fierce battle between the two sides, the whirlwind has quietly driven to the stern of the Mandela. "I'll go up to negotiate with the captain of the merchant ship first, and you stay here on standby." Tank was about to leave after explaining, but the loud sound of cannons reminded him that he should leave a secret signal, and he ordered again. "If you see me cutting off the sail of this ship in a while, you will go and capture the ship of the Black-Toed pirate. Don't leave a single one behind, kill them all for me." "What about this whirlwind?" "No," Tank pointed to Black-Toad's big ship, "see that, then it's called a pirate ship. It will be ours from now on. Long live the captain." The sailors were enthusiastic, all eager to try, without the slightest fear. "By the way, you cut some cloth strips from your clothes and tie them around your heads. Later, you can distinguish between the enemy and the enemy." Tank said, and he did the same, tying his hair in a knot. Strips of cloth fluttered in the wind behind his head. The pirates of the whirlwind followed suit and reached a uniform attire. Tank glanced around, all of them looked like Lanbo, with cloth strips on their heads, stern faces, sturdy stature, and each of them held a razor-sharp axe in their hands. At that time, he made a decision in his heart to take this group of people to do the worst things in the world and carry out terrorism to the end, otherwise it would be too bad for their appearance. In fact, it is also an option to take refuge in the Black Toad, but Tank does not like to be subservient to others. These days, he has become accustomed to being the boss. And if he chooses to run away, firstly, it is not his style, and secondly, he also needs a chart to understand the geographical location, otherwise he will have to smear his eyes and wander around at sea. Tank pulled out his slender machete and cut off the rope. The huge pulling force pulled him up into the sky, and he took the opportunity to jump onto the stern of the Mandela. A timid man squatted there and shivered. Tank kindly smashed the guy with the handle of the knife, and borrowed the flintlock gun on the man's waist by the way. At this moment, a system prompt sounded, ding. You made a robbery, which belongs to piracy, and adds 1 reward point. In the midst of the chaos of war, Tang Ke didn't have time to check the system. Besides, 1 reward point was too few, so it was unnecessary. He swaggered to the middle of the hull, and took time to shoot a man with a black toad. The recoil was not small, black smoke was coming from the muzzle, and the smell of gunpowder came out. He then threw away the gun. This kind of gun was too time-consuming to reload. If it was easy to use, no one would be stupid enough to fight hand-to-hand. The ship swayed back and forth like crazy, and the shouting and shelling formed a tyrannical symphony, which could arouse the primitive desire to kill in people's hearts. Tank avoided the fight, wandered from the gaps between the battle groups, and occasionally blocked. He saw a giant toad that would spit cannonballs on the opposite ship, but there was no time to be surprised at the greatness of the Creator. There was a dying man lying on the ground in front of him. He was very kind-hearted and had a cross around his neck. At first glance, he was a kind-hearted and good man. Tank put a knife on the neck of the good man and asked, "Tell me, who is your captain?" The good man used his last strength and pointed to the only woman among the men. Elizabeth's body has already been painted, but she is still fighting with blood, like a raging female white tiger, with 5 corpses lying under her feet. Tang Ke's eyes lit up, and he felt that this tigress was amazing, with a plump front chest, tight rear buttocks, and a very curvaceous body. Since there is a law that opposites attract, it should be easier to deal with than a male captain. He stepped on the good man under his feet and ran to the front, and in the middle of it, 2 people fought hard, blocking his way. Before crossing, he would do a trick, that is, slam the bricks and slap, but after crossing here, there is a basic swordsmanship in his mind. Although he is holding a knife in his hand, he is familiar with it. He used the tip of the knife to change the path of one of the swords, causing the swords of the 2 to penetrate each other's bodies and fall together. This time out of the way. Ding! You killed 2 people, it's a pirate act, and 10 bonus points will be added. The system prompt came again, like a reminder text message from a mobile phone, but Tank still had no time to pay attention. The pirate ship has gun doors, and a bomb-spitting frog opened its big mouth and spit out a dense amount of small iron bullets, which slammed into the direction of Elizabeth. She grabbed a pirate in front of her, and the pirate became a sieve for her. Someone was about to take the opportunity to sneak attack on Elizabeth, but Tank arrived just in time and drove the surrounding pirates back with 2 swords. Then he extended a helping hand in a gentlemanly manner and grabbed the female captain who was about to fall. The posture was very similar to that of some kind. The dance posture, in the background of the raging fire, does not have a wild romance. "Are you the captain of this ship?" Tang pulled her up. Except for the calluses on the tiger's mouth, his hands were very soft. Elizabeth looked at the Oriental man with a bit of evil in front of her and asked, "Who are you?" Tank recalled some fragments of the Western Middle Ages in his mind, bent down and kissed the back of her hand lightly, and replied, "I'm the captain of the Whirlwind. I came here to rescue you when I saw your ship was attacked." There were 2 pirates who couldn't see them being so leisurely, so they killed them again, and the swords slashed side by side at Tank's bent back. Without her reminder, Tank turned around and swung a knife, sending the enemy's weapons flying. The hands of the two sneak attackers were cut by the weapons, and they took a few steps back. "You are the captain of that boat? How do I think you are a pirate too?" Elizabeth withdrew her hand and asked cautiously. The man opposite exuded a very dangerous aura. "The identity of a pirate won't affect me coming to rescue you, little girl." "No, it's a lady." Elizabeth wanted to ask why, but seeing the emergency, she changed her mind and said, "Well, please help me fight, I will give you a commission later." As she spoke, she used her sword to push back the enemy around her. "I'll help you deal with these pirates, but we have to make an agreement." Tank stabbed the pirate behind her with a knife and stabbed to death. "What agreement?" Elizabeth also stabbed to death a bearded pirate who came running. The two held their weapons and faced each other again, so close that they could feel the heat coming from each other. "I'll take someone on their ship later, and you can't abandon me." www.mtlnovel.com. After the situation improves, you will have to counterattack. Your ship's firepower is too small, we have to get on their boat to win. Elizabeth looked suspiciously, she was afraid that this was a trap. The distance between the two ships is very close. You can see the situation of the opposite ship. Once the situation improves, you can lead someone to counterattack, how about it? Tank looked at her with pressing eyes. No matter how the situation looked, it was beneficial to the Mandela. Elizabeth agreed and nodded. "How many people are in your boat?" she asked. "There are about 80 people." He lied, the actual number of people on board was indeed stretched, so it would be better to hide it. "Okay, if there are these people, there is still a chance of winning." There was a glimmer of hope in her eyes. "Can you kiss me before leaving?" he asked abruptly, staring at the blue in the other's eyes. "Okay." She happily agreed and pecked him on the cheek, so fast that he didn't feel at all. Tank laughed, raised his hand and cut off the ropes on the mast, causing the Mandela's sails to crash down. "What are you doing?" she stomped angrily. This is the attack code." Tank said. He had already grabbed the rope and flew up. The pulling force of the sails brought him up, and he swung towards Black Toad's boat like Mount Tai. Elizabeth stood where she was, watching Tank's back fly towards the pirate ship, her heart beating uneasily. Under the throwing force of the rope, Tank successfully landed on the Black Toad pirate ship, surrounded by all the coveted enemies, with the sense of oppression from a hungry wolf looking around. "Good afternoon." Tank greeted casually as if he was out of the way. Keter walked over angrily, pointed at Tank with the barrel of his left arm, and shouted, "I just saw you attacking the Black Toad, this is a very unwise behavior. Please calm down. In fact, I was trapping the people of that ship and defrauding their trust. Didn't you see that I said a lot to the female captain?" "Oh? What did you tell her?" Tank cast his gaze behind Ketel. The sailors of the Whirlwind had already climbed up from the side of the ship. They saw the attack signal, and they all had swords in their mouths. Their hook-throwing skills came into play, they clung to the side of the boat with the hook and climbed up the ropes. The Black Toad pirates focused their attention on the left side of the hull, while the Cyclone sailors all touched it from the right side. They crept forward, and two of them took off the knives in their mouths and wiped them with their backhands. After the necks of the two Black Toad pirates hummed twice, the pirates fell to the deck with blood flowing. As soon as the reinforcements came, Tank had confidence, pointed a knife to Keter's nose and said, "I told her to screw your head off." Ketel was stunned for a moment, then his breath became heavy, and he shouted savagely, "You are courting death, I will kill you and your sailors." He pulled the trigger with his right hand, and then triggered the internal flint impact the fire scythe, the flames that burst out ignited the gunpowder, and the gun barrel in the left hand roared and blasted a cannonball. When the opponent raised his hand, Tank had already made a dodging action, and the cannonball flew past his bent back. Seeing that the captain was surrounded by the enemy, the sailors of the whirlwind roared in joy and charged up with their swords in hand. This time, the pirates of Black Toad were startled, and they all turned around and hurriedly resisted the attack. "You little ones, kill me!" Tank shouted, and completely tore his face with the people of Black Toad. He slashed and moved with the machete in his hand, injuring 2 people in a row, and even stabbed Keter a few times. He is the 3rd captain of a pirate regiment, and he is quite skilled in swordsmanship. Do you think these people can defeat us? Don't forget that the pirates on this ship are all battle-hardened warriors. Keter seemed to shoot fire from his eyes when he spoke. The number of whirlwinds is at a disadvantage, and they are often able to fight 1 against 3, but they are all fighting desperately, no less than the pirates of the Black Toad. That might be the case. Seeing such a situation, Tank replied firmly. He still blindly believed that as long as he took down Ketel, the pirate leader, he could control the situation. Ketel holds a knife in one hand, and his knife skills are extremely sturdy. He is on a par with Tank. The Black Toad pirates on the side come up to besiege Tank. In this way, Tank can't bear it, facing the weapons attacking from all directions. He blocked the left and the right, and hung the collar on his shoulders. "Ketel, do you dare to challenge me, Oneo none?" Tank shouted in the difficult resistance. "Humph, why don't you dare, you all step back and hand him over to me." In Ketel's eyes, Tank is a yellow-haired boy. He has the pride of being a captain and does not allow him to be afraid of challenges. In this era, duels are popular, pirates can have no conscience, but they can't lose face. They backed away, allowing the 2 captains to duel Oneo none. Tang Ke did everything he could to maximize the skills he knew. "Boy, just your ability is not enough." Keter's swordsmanship was higher than that of Tank, and even Oneo none, he quickly gained the upper hand. Although his left arm cannot fire continuously, it is equally sharp as a weapon. On the other side, on the Mandela, the battle was eased, but there were still a large number of pirates attacking the Mandela. Elizabeth led the crew to continue to resist. She sometimes looked at the Black Toad pirate ship and saw that Tang Ke was indeed fighting according to the agreement, but she didn't have the idea of taking someone to rush up, not yet. "Boy, let you see what a swordsman is before you die." Keter flew into the air with a tiger leap, and slashed condescendingly. A faint air current appeared. Tank rolled on the ground to dodge, and when he looked again, the position he was standing just now was cut out of the ravine by Ketel. Ketel's whole person's aura was lifted, and the long sword in his hand made the tiger wind, and under the sharp air current, he could hurt people from the air. Tang Ke jumped to hide, but was chased by the airflow and cut a wound, and the blood smeared his clothes red in the blink of an eye. He grimaced in pain, feeling that he was not a rival, so he had to fight and flee, running to the stern in embarrassment. Keter laughed wildly and chased after him unhurriedly. Tang Ke estimated that the airflow was similar to sword energy, and to put Ketel on the earth, he would have to be caught in the Chinese Academy of Sciences for analysis, but it is probably not a rare thing in this other world. He jumped over a fire left by the explosion of the Molotov cocktail, and saw the bomb-spitting frog that was crawling on the ground and spraying shotguns in front of him. In this naval battle, the bomb-spitting frog played a great role in hitting the Mandela into a mess. Tank was forced so tightly that he didn't have time to think deeply, but he could see at a glance that this giant toad was the main force of the attack. This action angered the other bomb-spitting frogs on the deck, who turned around and yelled at Tank, sticking out their long tongues and rolling up the nearby swords. The shape of the spit frog holding a sword with its tongue and slashing is a bit nondescript. Ding! You have discovered an unknown creature. Activate the monster illustration function and add 10 bonus points. The electronic prompt sounded in Tank's mind, but he didn't have time to call it out to check. The bloated bomb-spitting frog formed a siege, which made his situation even more difficult. With the enemy on his back, he had to roll over from the side of the ship and jumped into the sea. Ketel skillfully loaded a cannonball into his left arm and fired a cannon at Tank, who had dived into the sea. After hitting the air, he went deep into the sea and brought out a long string of bubbles. Tank's cheeks were bulging as he paddled with his hands and feet in the sea. Under the immersion in salty sea water, the wounds were so painful that they were unbearably painful. He was in a dire situation, and at this rate his sailors would be wiped out and the battle would be lost. If it wasn't for Keitel's single strength, Tank would have had a chance. He hadn't even seen the land of another world, so of course he didn't want to say goodbye like that. But right now, he doesn't have any bargaining chips to make a comeback. Thinking of chips, he naturally thought of the pirate system. Yes. Pirate system. Tank seemed to be empowered, and he grabbed this life-saving straw at once. He has been receiving reminders since just now that every time he robs or kills, the reward points will be increased, so it should be increased by a lot now. These reward points should be very useful. While diving, he called up the system interface, clicked on his name, and then looked at the reward point value. It really rose to 44 points. He recalled what happened just now. www.mtlnovel.com. Fighting and looting will increase by 1 point, killing a person will increase by 5 points, and found that unknown creatures increase more, which is 10 points. With sharp eyes, he found that there were 3 small options in the lower corner of the character interface, namely Learn Skills, Upgrade, Transfer. There is only a thin line between him and Keitel's fighting power. If he can also emit that kind of sword energy, it is not that there is no chance of victory. He excitedly entered the Learn skill. The options that pop up are Captain skill and Swordsman skill. Click on Swordsman skills, and what comes out is a row of various sword skills, such as the initial Whirlwind Slash, Furious Stab, Tiger Leap, and Half Moon Slash. But when he looked at the learning conditions again, he was dumbfounded. The most common Whirlwind Cut required 50 points, and the Swordsman level needed to reach the 2nd rank, and the physical attack power needed to reach 3. In other words, he can't learn a single trick right now. He was still holding his breath at the bottom of the sea, and he didn't have any time to waste, so he didn't go to see the captain's skill, and just retreated. Since he couldn't learn the skills, he had to choose upgrade. As a result, it took a full 300 points to upgrade from a first-order swordsman to a second-order swordsman, which was even more out of reach. He was almost going crazy because of this. If it weren't for the fact that he couldn't open his mouth, he really wanted to scold this black heart system. He was already on the verge of running wild, and finally glanced at the system interface, and suddenly saw the recruitment option. He clicked on this option this time, and another list popped up. Seaman Sailor Magic Creature. Tank rekindled hope, and clicked on the Seaman column, trying to find something helpful. Junior Seafarers. They are a group of marine rookies who are active on small and medium-sized ships. They need to sail with you and grow together in the process. Captain, gunner, archer, musketeer, lookout, fisherman, craftsman, sailor, merchant, doctor, swordsman, fighter, priest, alchemist. Tank was dazzled all at once. There are quite a lot of types of sailors that can be recruited, and there are many more. Some are talents necessary for sailing, and the other are fantasy occupations. He was in urgent need of fire support now, so he clicked on the musketeer column and popped up 3 musketeers for recruitment, with different abilities. Musketeer. The musketeer is an epoch-making product, which has changed the mode of warfare in the world and set off a prelude to the era of hot weapons. Although the musket's rate of fire is slow, its enormous destructive power can destroy any armor, even if the enemy is wearing chainmail made by dwarven artisans. This is the system's introduction to the musketeer. He randomly named a musketeer's name. Name: Bertrand Seymour. Occupation: musketeer, Tier 1. Race: elves. They are graceful walkers in the woods, chanting songs of praise to the gods under the moon. Their long life has created their picturesque behavior, but when they take up arms, they are unequivocal. Title: None. Features: gentleman's demeanor, elegant speech and behavior can win the favor of women, female favorability +1, and the same effect when dealing with noble politicians. Noble favorability +1, elf family, this is a superiority race, shooting weapons +2, element affinity +2, physical condition permanent health, lifespan is 3 to 5 times that of humans, defense 2, accuracy, this means their eyesight and body coordination, this value will affect their reload speed and chance of hitting the enemy. Reloading speed, the flintlock gun, as a pioneer of thermal weapons, is still in the backward stage, it takes 10 seconds to several minutes to reload. Equipment, common flintlock pistol, rate of fire 1 round per minute, range 100 yards, attack power depends on the hit location, skill, mind and eye shooting, use the feeling of the heart to find the enemy's position, a full body blow, the hit rate can be increased to 90%. Language, common language of the Bright Alliance. Modern Elvish. Physical condition, healthy. Reward amount, 0 loyalty, 90, seafarers will be absolutely loyal to you at the beginning of recruitment, please be bold and give them orders, requirement reward points, 350. Maintenance fee, 50 silver/month. Tank guessed that if he really recruited such a musketeer, he might be able to kill the Keter in one shot, but the demand for this point is so terrifying that he needs more than his own leveling up. The other 2 musketeers don't need to look either, they're definitely not far behind. Except for the musketeer, the points required by the rest of the seafarers are generally very high, and they cannot quench their thirst from afar. Although these seafarers are powerful living forces, they can only eat cakes to satisfy their hunger. Tank simply cannot afford the corresponding reward points. In desperation, he could only put his last hope on the sailors. Sailor, on a ship, they are the most basic personnel configuration, and their status is only higher than that of slaves. But this also proves that they are the people who make the most of the voyage, whether they are pulling the ship to the shore when docking, or engaging in a battle with the enemy, they are indispensable. Grappling hook, sailor blade, sailor paddle, sailor donk didn't expect that there are so many types of sailors. He clicked in and found that sailors needed very few points. The grappling sailor needs 4 points, the blade sailor needs 3 points, and the paddle sailor needs 2 points. Only then did his spirit rise. Although his water ability was good, he was almost at the limit after holding it for so long, so he had to speed up the operation. He has 44 reward points, which is really tight. After thinking about it, he ordered 2 grappling hook sailors, and the rest recruited 12 white blade sailors. Hand-to-hand sailors, they are good at hand-to-hand combat with various weapons. They are as cruel and ruthless as beasts, and they will take human lives mercilessly. Combat strength, skill, none. Number of people, 12. Loyalty, 80. Hand-blade sailors are more wild and untamed than other sailors, their initial loyalty will be slightly lower, but they will still obey the captain. Fatigue value, 100. Newly recruited sailors will have full physical strength at the beginning, points required, 4. Maintenance fee, 10 silver coins/person/month. Tank adjusted the number of people, clicked OK, and waited quietly for the appearance of these sailors. At first, there was no movement. After only a few seconds, a few muffled noises suddenly sounded in the sea water. He glanced down and saw more than a dozen people swimming up from the bottom of the sea, all of them murderous, as if someone owed them money. Suddenly, a dozen men with ferocious spirits appeared in the sea. The scene was spectacular, but seeing them, Tank felt cordial in his heart. The new sailors fluttered skillfully, holding their breath to surround the captain in their minds. There were only 2 messages in their memory, one, they were sailors, and the other, Tank was the captain. Tank pointed to the sea and said only one word. Kill. The sea drowned his voice and filled his mouth with salty taste. The new sailors, with fierce gleams in their eyes, went upstream like moths to the flames, and surfaced one after another. Tank then exposed his head from the sea and took 2 sharp breaths. The pressure in his lungs was relieved all of a sudden, and he filled his stomach with cold air. On this ship, except for those with cloth strips tied to their heads, the rest are all enemies, and none are left. Tank pointed to the pirate ship of Black Toad, and then ordered, 2 with grappling hooks tied to their waists. Go first, the rest go up later. The new sailors are the most qualified cannon fodder in the world. They have no objection, and robbing ships and killing people are what they love. The 2 hook-throwing sailors emerged to the surface, the ropes in their hands were rounded, and they threw upwards, grasping the side of the ship without error, and the ropes were stretched straight. Because the grappling hook sailor's combat effectiveness is inferior to that of the hand-to-hand sailor, the hand-to-hand sailor went up first, and their behavior was discovered by the pirates. The hand-to-hand sailor was not afraid of death, and while crawling, grabbed the knife with one hand to fight the enemy above. Only after Tang Ke died, he successfully climbed to the top. After one person protected the position of the grappling hook, the rest climbed up like monkeys. Tang Ke finally made the finale. When he went up, his own people had already formed a defensive circle, which was relatively safe. He glanced at it and found that most of the previous sailors had died heroically, and only 5 wounded were still stubbornly resisting the siege of the Black Toad pirates. Let's kill them to save those brothers. Tank pointed at the survivors and shouted. His machete had long since disappeared, so he had to pick up a pirate's axe and use it. This kind of weapon can cut and stab, and is more ferocious than a sword, but it suffers more heavily. Keetle was originally organizing the pirates to attack the remaining few people. Hearing the report of the little pirate next to him, he turned his eyes to Tank's side, and frowned. Their side had blasted Donk's boat into sawdust, and the boat proved to be an empty one. Where did this wave of people brought by Tank come from? Keetle was in shock, and ordered his subordinates to attack Tank and the others ruthlessly. www.mtlnovel.com and let the bomb-spitting frog start the battle with shotguns. Tank knew very well that there were not enough people on his side, so he secretly decided that only if he kept earning reward points, he could continue to recruit sailors. Counterattack. The shotgun attack by the Spit Frog was terrifying, and the person who bore the brunt of the attack was immediately battered all over. Tank and the others gritted their teeth and rushed forward, fighting with the people of the Black Toad, so that the Spit Frog was afraid of being injured. When it comes to accomplices, he will be timid. Tang Ke's eyes were red, and the axe and tomahawk in his hand opened and closed, wounding 5 people in a row, killing 3 people, and was died into a man. When they joined forces with the old sailors, there were only 8 of them left. Cover me! Tank shouted loudly, pulling one of his sailors in front of him. He quickly sank into the system, and quickly recruited new White Blade sailors with his consciousness. He exited the system and went into battle again. This pirate's system has strict rules. Only when Donk achieves piracy can he get reward points. Sailors don't count as killing people. During the period, he killed a bomb-spitting frog and got 10 reward points, which is quite generous. You will pay the price for your stupidity. Keeter shouted, firing artillery with his left arm. The roaring shells knocked a sailor off the boat, whose life and death are unknown. Victory belongs to Lao Tzu, and this boat belongs to Lao Tzu. Tang Ke was so excited to kill that he had the energy of a hero in Liang Shan back then. While speaking, Tank's newly recruited White Blade sailors climbed up along the grappling hooks left on the side of the ship. There were as many as 15 people. Here, come and help! Tank shouted at the bewildered White Blade sailors. When the sailors saw that the captain was surrounded, they immediately cheered up. After identifying the situation, they swung their weapons to kill them. They could definitely be called fresh troops. Damn it, why is there another group of people? Keeter stared at the people who rushed over, shaking his heart. There were not many pirates on their ship, and most of them had been damaged. Today, Tank is considered to have opened the killing ring. His nature is that of a bloodthirsty beast, but he had to put away his fangs in the past, and it is not until today that his first cold light has been revealed. He was already exhausted, and completely supported his spine with a fighting spirit. He ripped open the pirate's chest with a slash, then kicked the dead body with a slash, pointed the tip of the axe at Keter, and said coldly, "Kill their boss first, come with me." He knew that he was invincible, and he also gave up the thought of wanting to fight Oneo Nun. Ketel's face changed, and he hurriedly shouted, "Let all the bomb-spitting frogs in the cabin come out." Tang Kai took the lead and rushed into the crowd. The smell of gunpowder smoke and blood stimulated his nerves, and system prompts sounded. This was an obituary of the loss of life. He changed his decision to kill the thief's head, and led someone to guard the exit hatch. As soon as the fat toads climbed up, he blocked the exit and slashed. There are more bonus points for killing spit frogs, and they are more difficult than humans. After killing 3 bomb-spitting frogs in a row, Tank recruited for the 3rd time today. This time, more than 10 white blade sailors climbed up from the side of the ship. Tang Kai ordered some people to stick to the hatch, and asked to keep the bomb-spitting frog inside. And he led the remaining nearly 20 sailors to attack the Black Toad pirate group on the deck. "People from the Mandela, what are you waiting for?" Tank's voice was like a rumbling thunder, shocking everyone on the Mandela who were still hesitating. Because Tank and the others dragged the Black Toad pirates, the Mandela was rested and took advantage of the situation to exterminate the pirates who boarded the ship. Their ship has been destroyed, and even if they want to escape, there is no chance, and there is only one option left. The 30 or so people on the boat stared dumbfounded at the blood-covered Tank on the opposite boat, and then turned their attention to the beautiful female captain, waiting for the order. "The crew of the Mandela, take up arms, and strive to end the battle before the sun sets today," Elizabeth said with a murderous look, pointing the slender sword in her hand to the opposite ship. The crew saw the dawn of victory, and the overall momentum was greatly lifted. They shouted and rushed to the enemy ship, killing the sky. In cold weapon battles, morale is the decisive factor, otherwise there would be no such thing as 1 rush, another decline, and 3 exhaustions. The ropes and slats left by the pirates just now became the way for everyone on the Mandela to board the ship. The 2 sides joined forces victoriously and attacked the remnants of the Black Toad. At the juncture of life and death, everyone abandoned their cowardice and fought for nothing but to survive. The 2 streams of people gathered together, and Tank met the female captain and looked at each other. "We met again, little girl." "No, it's a lady," Tank greeted. Elizabeth didn't care about the other party's vulgar words, and said sincerely, "Thank you for your rescue with your crew, otherwise my Mandela will be sacked. Let's fight together. Let's fight this group of sea creatures together. The demons are killed." He nodded, turned his eyes to the remaining enemies on the opposite side, and said, "The battle is over in a while, will you tell me your name?" Elizabeth feels very honored to meet Mr. Elizabeth. She gave a sword salute, her slender figure was hidden in the sword light, and she bowed slightly. Tank smiled slightly, lifted his breath and killed it again, rushing towards the last group of stubborn pirates on the bow. Elizabeth followed closely, clenching the sword in her hand. After the numbers of the 2 sides are added together, there are more people than the rest of the Black Toad pirates, and the number is superior. Ketel bore the brunt of the brunt, and he shouted with a grim face, "The people of the Black Toad pirates, you are the wolves of the sea, how can you be defeated by such a group of prey? Come on!" At the last moment of the naval battle, the person with the musket on both sides shot first, and unfortunately was shot and fell on the spot. After a round of musket attacks, the 2 sides fought in one place, fighting entirely with cold weapons. 4 or 5 people surrounded Ketel in the middle, but Ketel was still invincible with his strong swordsmanship, and those people were defeated one after another. Tank had seen Elizabeth's battle just now. He knew that although she was a woman, her swordsmanship was no worse than his own. He gave her a wink, and the 2 met Keter together. Keter kept parrying, and from time to time he released some powerful sword skills. The airflow attached to the sword was extremely sharp, and a single sword could cut through ordinary weapons. "Our Black Toad pirates are the overlords of this sea, you people just wait to accept the punishment of death." Keter said fiercely, and another sword stabbed out, and Tang Ke escaped dangerously. Tang felt that fighting like this was not the way to go, so he began to look for Ketel's flaws. He noticed that the opponent's defense on the left was relatively weak because of the lack of his left arm, so he tried his best to attack there. Although Keter's left arm had a metal cannon barrel, it was slightly shorter than his arm. After being attacked, he was in a hurry. Elizabeth seized the opportunity, her eyes narrowed slightly, and she stabbed with a straight sword, which stabbed Keter's left shoulder. Tang Ke was unforgiving, and while Keter's face was twitching from pain, he struck down with an axe and hit him hard. Keter let out a whimper, staggered a few steps, and fell from the guardrail into the sea. Only then did Tang breathe a sigh of relief, and then shouted, "Ketel has been killed by me." When the members of the Black Toad Pirates heard that the boss was dead, they were in chaos. Coupled with the small number of people, they were defeated one after another, and some chose to jump into the sea. As for the bomb-spitting frogs, their tempers were also quite fiery, so they had to be put to death, and none of them remained. Tang Ke took the lead in clearing the rest of the ship, and this battle was considered a curtain call. Just as the last enemy was eliminated, a system alert sounded. Ding! You occupied a ship, which belongs to piracy, and you get 300 reward points. Tank was overjoyed in his heart, and even the pain of the wound subsided. Now he has tasted the benefits brought by the system, these points are more useful than gold coins. In the battle just now, he has accumulated some points, and the 300 points are already available for him to upgrade. On the interface in his mind, there is a trophy icon in the lower right corner. Click on it, and the gains from this battle will pop up. Booty, a medium-sized brig, 2,132 gold coins, 55 silver coins and 33 copper coins, some other treasures, equivalent to about 240 gold coins, and some food supplies. Impulse, new ship obtained can be renamed medium brig durability, 35/50ths, the ship is already damaged, displacement, 150 tons maximum number of people, 250 people current number, 1 captain, 28 sailors, including the wounded. Weapons, none. Comprehensive combat power, functional buildings, captain's room, kitchen, observation deck, dining room, bridge, prison cell, sailor cabin, number 5, material cabin, number 5, accessories, jib, square sail, ram, lifeboat, quantity 2. Average speed, 8 knots stability, flexibility, wind-driven sailboats, blindly pursuing speed, will reduce flexibility. Tank took a brief look and then exited the system, because he still had injuries that had not been treated, and the gold coins on the ship had not been found. Intuition told him that the belongings should be in the captain's cabin. The captain's cabin of this ship is located at the stern and built on the deck. He climbed the stairs and headed there. Now this ship is mixed with people from both ships, and everyone is searching for everything on the ship. Opening the door, there were 7 or 8 people crowded inside, including Elizabeth. The facilities on the ship are all simple and practical, but the captain's room looks a little more luxurious, with a solid desk, decorative swords on the wall, hangers in the corners, and the sea breeze from the window with lace. Tulle curtains. The owner of this room is now asleep at the bottom of the sea. People's attention is on the back room, and there is a door inside the captain's room. Hey, this door is locked. The speaker pulled the doorknob hard twice, but the door was solid. Let me try, I've been a blacksmith and I've made treasure chests. A crew member on the Mandela squeezed up and took out a small string of keys from his pocket, among which were 2 thin metal rods. He put his ear on the keyhole, fiddling tentatively in his hand. After a while, the others became impatient. www.mtlnovel.com urging the blacksmith to hurry up. Tank couldn't pick locks, so he simply let the man open the door for him. He stood behind the crowd, people's attention was on the door, and they didn't notice him. With a click, the blacksmith who picked the lock showed a smile. The person next to him saw this and pushed him away impatiently, and opened the door. In the small space that can only accommodate 2 people standing, there are 2 treasure chests on the ground. Although they are all locked, there are more than a dozen insignificant silver and copper coins scattered on the ground, shining with an attractive metallic luster. Everyone sighed, and their eyes lit up like a lamp. The money here is enough for me to spend all my life. If you give it to me, I will change a woman a day. A tall and thin man said with a smile. Look at how promising you are. Another person gave the tall and slender man a blank look, and reached out to grab the silver coins on the ground. Wait, what are you doing? We grabbed this ship. One of Tank's subordinates shouted violently, and then drew his sword. The nerves of this group of people immediately became tense, forming a tense situation. Just as Elizabeth was about to open her mouth to say something, her shoulders suddenly sank, and a sword was placed around her neck. Her color suddenly changed. The one who shot was Tank. Don't move. People from the Mandela, your captain is in my hands. Whoever dares to make a move will end up with the people of the Black-Toed Pirates. Tank stuck to Elizabeth's back, took off her saber, and stared at the man on the Mandela. It's not a gentleman's act to kidnap a woman. Elizabeth blushed with anger. Sorry, little girl, I'm not a gentleman, but a pirate. Tank blew hot air in her ear, then ignored her glare, and turned to the people present. Both of us have been severely damaged, let's fight again. It's no good for anyone, we've fought together before, and I promise to give each of you their due. I hope we resolve the dispute in a peaceful way. She snorted and said, I really want to know, what is the so-called due share? I will divide according to my rules. There are many, maybe less, depending on my mood. I can't be as fair as a scale, because I am the captain of the pirate. Your betrayal makes me very disappointed. Please don't move. Tank steadied the sword in his hand, the gleaming blade reflected on her cheek. I did this to protect both of us, otherwise they would be readied because of those gold coins. Now quickly order your people to retreat. If you don't have the appeal of a captain, I will treat you as an ordinary crew member. At that time, you will miss the state of being held hostage now, for sure. Under coercion, Elizabeth had to give an order to let the people of the Mandela return to her ship. Her prestige on the ship is very high, and many people have been sailors who have been with her for several years. Moreover, the ship is full of law-abiding businessmen, and if the crew turns their backs on the captain, it will violate the law of the sea. Tank's nerves were tense. He knew that this person in front of him was a master swordsman, so he didn't dare to neglect her. A few times when she made a bigger move, he would bring the sword closer to the opponent's shatterable neck. He ordered people to remove the fenders and ropes of the 2 ships and completely separate the 2 ships. He held her hostage, stood behind the ship's rail, and said to the Mandela from a distance, Now, both ships must obey my orders, and the 2 ships must be repaired as soon as possible, and each other is not allowed to board the other's ship. The Mandela leads the way, the ship follows. When we reach the port, I will release your captain and give you the gold you deserve. What if we don't agree? Shouted a vigorous crew member on the opposite ship. The answer is very simple. First, your beautiful female captain will die. Second, you will surely die too. While Tank was talking, his own pirates were already standing on the side of the ship, some with muskets and some with cold weapons. The 2 sides were allies fighting together just now, but now they have turned against each other because of those gold coins. Interest is always the best fuse. After weighing the pros and cons, Elizabeth reluctantly persuaded the crew not to do anything, and the 2 sides did not fight. Tank nodded with satisfaction, and the situation finally stabilized. In the face of the current situation, he had to solve it with such a fierce and iron-blooded wrist. If it weren't for the fact that Keitel's individual strength was too strong, the hijacking of ships would not have been so chaotic at that time, and the situation might have been controlled as it is now. After the rules were set, the 2 ships moved away from each other, and they were busy with each other, ignoring each other. One is to quickly repair the ship, and the other is to treat the wounded. In contrast, the Mandela was more severely damaged, and even the stern rudder was damaged by the spit frog. The people here put out the fire on the deck first. There were holes on the deck, and there were several places on the hull that were flooded with sea water. Tank's injury was considered minor, only the shoulders and arms saw blood. Under the erosion of seawater salt, the wounds were doubly painful. He withdrew his sword and looked at the woman who had been held hostage by him for so long with a faint smile. Elizabeth turned around and stared back with an unpleasant expression. She also had injuries on her body, especially a palm-length wound on her back. "Miss Elizabeth, your wound needs to be treated immediately, do you want me to help?" Tank asked kindly. Now that the boat is all his people, he is not afraid of her playing tricks. "No need. I have a ship doctor on board," she said aggressively. "I just ordered the two ships not to board each other. I won't revoke it immediately, and I think your ship doctor must be busy now. Besides, are you sure he is still alive?" She recalled that she did not see the shadow of the ship doctor just now, and she muttered, "I don't need your help. It doesn't matter, you can come by yourself, or ask anyone on my ship to help you, such as this one." Tank pointed to a pirate beside him, the bearded man with a finger on his face with deep scars. "Those big hands don't seem to be able to tie any bandages, and they are more suitable for demolishing houses with bare hands." Elizabeth glanced around. The boat was full of ugly big men. In terms of appearance, only the pirate captain was more attractive. He had a bohemian temperament all over his body, and he carried the special handsomeness of an oriental man. "Okay." She secretly hated in her heart and nodded reluctantly. Tank took her to the captain's room, which has now become his private domain, and no one dared to come in without an order. He rummaged a few times and found some medical supplies in the cabinet. There were medicines in small bottles, but he couldn't find any medicines labeled as pain relievers. He glanced around, and when he saw the wine cabinet, his eyes lit up. He took off a bottle of rum and handed it to her. She has been crawling and rolling on the boat for several years, and naturally knows that drinking can relieve pain. Without saying a word, she opened the bottle cap and took 2 sips, and her face quickly rose to a charming red. Because of her fair skin, this kind of wine drunk red is more obvious. At least she didn't show any shyness on the surface. She sat generously on the chair, turned her back to Tank, and took off her clothes one by one. She groaned in pain as the clothes came off the wound. The upper body with female health beauty is exposed to the air, and bright red bloodstains spread on the snow-white back. Tank admired it for a few moments, then focused his attention on treating the wound, dipped a cotton cloth with rum, and began to wipe her wound. This was done to disinfect her with alcohol. He used to fight often, and injuries were inevitable. He could be regarded as a good doctor after a long illness, and his handling was on the same level as the doctors in the clinic. "If it weren't for the problems in front of me, I wouldn't hold you hostage. After all, we fought side by side just now, and we came together at the juncture of life and death." Tank wiped off the blood, and a sharp wound appeared in front of him. "Mr. Pirate, please stop talking nicely, it makes me feel sick to my stomach." She didn't know whether it was pain or anger, but she still had a bad tone. Tang Kai couldn't get used to these words, his face was cloudy, and he cursed, "Fuck, you are really stupid, if it wasn't for Lao Tzu's happy handling, the two of us would be fighting now. Can you win?" He speaks in the common language of the Light Alliance. This language is relatively formal, and there are not too many swear words and slang words. These few sentences he said are considered dirty to the limit. You. Elizabeth was so angry that she stuttered. If it weren't for the fact that she was clueless now, she might have turned around and taught Tank a lesson. "What are you? Don't move around, the medicine is not ready yet." Tank said angrily, "Also, think about it carefully, if I didn't kidnap you, what would happen now? Elizabeth blushed even more, her magnificent chest heaving up and down, her arms staggered to cover 2 vital points, and she gritted her teeth with hatred. If you dare to say something unclean again, I'll go out and fight with you. Okay, you try your best to see me with the way you are now. Tank said disdainfully. Pirates. Rogues. Save your energy. I'm not literate anymore, but your language is not literate. You can't really speak. Let me tell you, our 2 ships will not offend each other on the way to the port. River, I don't touch your goods, and you don't touch my treasures. I'll give you some points when you get there. After all, your boat has also killed a lot of people. This is what I mean to the dead, swallow them all. I feel sorry for myself, it's called stealing. Tank is soft-hearted and not hard-hearted. It's fine to have a good talk with him. If he plays hard with him, he will have to fight to the end. He smeared the hemostatic powder on her wound, and although the 2 were fighting each other www.mtlnovel.com, he still carefully applied the medicine. Elizabeth thought for a while without saying a word, then slowly recalled it, and understood that Tank had no choice but to hold her hostage, all for the purpose of controlling the situation. Well, I was really too impulsive just now. I agreed to your terms. After a war with pirates, you really shouldn't expect too much. It's strange to be calm after killing someone. Okay, wrap it up yourself. Tank clapped his hands, looked at the wound with satisfaction, and handed her the bandage. She thanked her softly, took the bandage, and wrapped it around the wound. When she tied the front chest, it was tight and suffocating because of her plumpness and fullness. It made her suffer a little, so she had to loosen it a little. Taking advantage of the fact that the other party was tying the bandage, Tank handled his own wound swiftly and tied the bandage. Elizabeth put on her clothes. When she turned around, she found that Tank was looking at her without blinking. She felt a little embarrassed and said dissatisfiedly, "Can't you turn your head away when the lady is changing? Be content. If it weren't for the current situation, I might not be able to hold on to it." Tank looked unshakable. If it wasn't for the battle he had just experienced, he wouldn't be sure if he would be in trouble. It's so nasty. She stared and took a few steps away from Tank. Tank placed Elizabeth in a room below deck and ordered someone to stand guard at the door. After that, he found time to find a secluded room, pulled out the pirate system, and clicked into the character interface.